Welcome back, everyone, to The Angry Chicken, the podcast all about Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft. I'm Garrett Weinzierl, and I'm sitting here today with Willie Dose Gregory and Jocelyn Moffat. Welcome back, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Doing all right?
Back to the original order, huh?
Yeah.
That was just
I know.
one off.
That
threw me off completely.
That's what we were...
Yeah, I know. That whole show sucked after that, Garrett, so thank you for bringing it back.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Also joining us today, returning guest to the show, Phil Kollar from Polygon. Welcome back, Phil.
Thank you for having me again. I'm kind of shocked that I didn't wear out my welcome.
You did not. Not at all. In fact,
you tried really hard, Phil, but alas, the people have spoken.
I'm gonna keep trying,
and they want to do that.
All right, let's see what you got this week.
Until I get banned from the show, I'm gonna keep coming back.
To try pretty hard to get banned from the show.
Yeah, I wonder actually what you'd have to do.
Now
I'm intrigued.
Let's find out. Phil, what you got?
I wrote an article about Hearthstone.
Insta-ban.
Insta-ban. Yep. How dare you? How dare you? Well, that's actually why you're here today, because we're not into it yet. But once we get into news, our big story today is actually going to be talking about your recent feature on Polygon, talking all about a super secret meeting that Blizzard had with a bunch of pros and you, apparently, Phil. And
I think, it was a bunch of people who are way better at Hearthstone than I am.
Wait, Garrett, shots fired, dude. Are you saying Phil's not a pro at Hearthstone?
Oh, I'm really not. I'm really.
I would say
my rank 17 right now says that I'm not.
And this is not me. This is not me backpedaling. I would say you're a pro entertainer at Hearthstone, because I still.
Thank you.
There hasn't been an adventure in a while, but damn if your playthrough of the last adventure, League of Explorers, wasn't one of the more entertaining things I saw around the internet around its release. So.
Well, thank you.
Yep. Anyways, just want to let folks know before we jump into the main discussion this week that if you are a Angry Chicken patron, meaning you're over at patreon.com/TAC supporting us, our patron hangout is going to be next Monday, February 29th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you're hearing this on the podcast feed or after it is posted, the post will be up on the Patreon with all of the info. If you already have the Skype account and all that jazz, it hasn't changed. Talk to you guys next Monday. Now, let's get into this week's Hearthstone news.
Good news, everyone!
Phil, you wrote an article.
I did.
The news.
I wrote way too many words.
It was lengthy and surprisingly full of, unsurprisingly, full of really interesting things. I'm going to stop trying to make fun of you now.
Surprisingly,
Garrett,
you
you're
wrote
really-
the article. That's weird, man.
Thank you for inviting me here to insult my writing. I appreciate it.
Just firing shots left and right over
Yeah,
here.
so if folks have missed this, I highly recommend you go over to Polygon right now and actually check it out. It's called Hearthstone and Community, with after the colon saying inside Blizzard's radical new approach to working with players, where you talked about, like I said at the top of the show, basically a big meeting that happened over a month before even BlizzCon, which means a month before League of Explorers was even announced.
It was way back. It was the last week of September of 2015. So it was a long time ago, by video game standards at least.
Yeah.
That Blizzard was already talking to people in the community about this huge format change.
Right. So what they did is they invited you and they invited a bunch of pro players out, and basically gave you guys like a look at their first run, their rough draft of what the formats were going to look like, and then took a bunch of feedback.
Yeah. And to be clear, I wasn't the only press out there. There were some press people besides me. I believe there was one person from PC Gamer, and I think one person from, I'm not remembering the name now, but it was a mobile-focused site. So there were other press people out there, but not many. It was mostly focused on getting the pros and getting community members, people who stream on Twitch and make YouTube videos and go to tournaments.
Yeah, well, someone there who, they needed people there who write articles to bear witness, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, that was at least my goal. When I first heard about it, they didn't tell me what they were going to be announcing there, but they said that they were bringing out community members to show them something early and talk to them about something really big and exciting. So from the start, my goal was kind of like, why are you bringing community members out? This is a really interesting approach. It feels like something that companies, I mean, a lot of companies bring community members out to like celebrate community, but they usually don't tell them things early for fear of stuff leaking, right?
Right, and I'm honestly surprised this didn't leak. And this makes
I was convinced it would.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I'm surprised, or like a lot of things make more sense now too. Because if you guys remember, at the end of last year, Ben Brode hinted that we'd be hearing something about formats, and then nothing came by the end of the year.
Well, he actually straight up said during the Q&A session at BlizzCon that there was going to be something going on there, very kind of like cryptic about what the plans actually were, but that it was something they were actively thinking about, and were aware that it was a problem that was going to be, something that had to be dealt with sooner rather than later, right?
Well, and the interesting thing too is at this event they were saying the initial plan was to announce this before BlizzCon.
Oh wow. Wow.
I think the idea was to get that announcement out of the way as a potentially like negative thing before BlizzCon, and then announce League of Explorers as the big positive thing. But clearly that got pushed back.
Yeah, I'm curious how much of that is due to the feedback they got, because it sounds like quite a few things changed as a result of the feedback.
Yeah, I mean, when I talked to Ben Brode just before they made the actual announcement, what was it, 2-3 weeks ago now? And yeah, that was at least the impression that he gave me, is that the reason they pushed things back was because they got so much feedback and they felt that they needed to go back to the drawing board, sort of take all of that into account and decide what they wanted to listen to, where they wanted to go from here.
Yeah. I really enjoyed some of the facts that some of these ideas are lifted straight out of suggestions that came out of this meeting. Like I think you mentioned that Savitz was the one who came up with, well, Wild should have its own ladder as well. And that is exactly what's happening now.
Yeah, initially they were just saying ladder ranked mode essentially would just be standard format, that there would be no ranked ladder for the
So what were they
Legacy or
recommending?
Wild.
Just casual play for what they were calling at that time Legacy?
Yeah, I guess it would just be casual play. It would just be it would be a mode without any sort of rankings or rewards.
Well, that's how you kill.
Yeah,
Legacy
exactly.
right there.
Yeah.
The competitive aspect to it right away.
It's funny. You're explaining what to me what it sounds like people think they're mad about, but it didn't end up being that way. Like all the people that are really mad, it's like, well, I only get to use all of my cards in one mode, and I've seen this so many times on Twitter, and every time Ben Brode is like, you can only use them in one mode now, and
it could have been so much worse.
Right,
Like,
and I could see that complaint really making sense if Wild didn't have a ladder.
I mean, I think there's legitimate concerns about how much wild mode will be supported and how much it will be balanced. I think that's something that I understand people being concerned about, I guess. But it does seem like Blizzard took some of the recommendations to heart at this meeting in terms of just like making it so that people who want to play a wild mode can still play it and feel like they're not just wasting their time.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I think is really important. And actually, so I am going through the process right now of attempting to build a modern Magic deck, and I'm feeling, I think, what some of the pains that people are going to feel, maybe 2 years from now when they're trying to build a Wild deck. But I think in the long term, what I'm looking at is like, well, I'll have this deck for like forever, basically. And I think that's also going to be like people are going to have that choice now. Like build a deck for forever, or build a deck for just right now, or like the only deck I can make. And so even though like I'm like I got to get all these overpowered cards, the end result is that I'll have this deck forever. And I think that's going to be important to some people.
Absolutely.
And some people are not going to care about that at all. They just want to play the current weird, wild, whatever's going on in standard thing. And it changes all the time. So.
Can't use the word wild.
I guess I should
standard
use the word
deals. Yeah,
wild there. Okay, right. Not wild at all. Totally tame.
Completely normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before they called it Wild, it was called Legacy. It sounds like we can thank Brian Kibler for suggesting that they call it something more Warcrafty.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a lot of discussion. I think somebody in the meeting brought up the idea of even making it like having some sort of like Cataclysm style story reason, like in an expansion for this change. And they were like, maybe that's too far. Maybe that's unnecessary.
We don't need to flavor everything. Everything does not need a flavor.
Yeah, absolutely. But they definitely understood like the push for just naming it Legacy, Magic the Gathering style was maybe that maybe it would go over better, I guess, if it had a more of a Warcrafty flavor to it.
No,
Is Wild Warcrafty though? I don't know if I'm picking up on the
it's
Warcraft.
better than Legacy.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's like
jungly.
It's slightly more, like very slightly more work. I don't know.
You know what sold me
Where
on
does
it?
Wild come up outside of like Mark of the Wild?
Well, you know what sold me on it immediately, and it was so dumb and kind of throwaway, but I immediately got it, was in the announcement, they just showed an image of a Wild deck in your deck slot having just the wooden vine around it. And I'm like, well, there you go. Like, you name it that, you slap that one little piece of UI on it.
And I think I almost wonder if that's related to the naming convention, if they just wanted something that they could convey very simply through the UI. And that was something they figured out that they could. Also, I mean, what are most of the cards that have Wild in the game? They're Druid cards, and Druid's only going to be playable in Wild format from now on. So cutting it out of standard.
We shall see.
Actually, yeah, that is to be debated, I think, heavily, because it's going to depend on the changes that happen to Force of Nature and Savage Roar, and those changes will affect those cards in Wild. So Druid might be hamstringed out the gate. But
they're going to be it's going to be interesting seeing what Druid is like.
Yeah. Ancient of Lore is definitely getting a change. It's going to be weird.
Daniel J. Newman is throwing out suggestions for different names: Diet Hearthstone, Hearthstone Zero, Crystal Hearthstone, Hearthstone Max.
Mm-hmm. These are great.
All great ideas.
Classic Hearthstone. See, they should have just called it Classic Hearthstone.
Guys, I can't wait to buy some Crystal Hearthstone off of
Hearthstone
eBay
Classic.
in like 6 years and see if it's still carbonated. I'm really looking forward to that.
Hearthstone Classic and then Hearthstone New, and then everyone.
My brother had a Crystal Hearthstone problem. He had to go through rehab. So.
Did he start cooking it because he got cancer? This is terrible. All right, chat room never change, please. So another one of the things that apparently during this initial pitch that has changed since was they only talked about removing Curse of Naxxramas and nothing else.
Yeah, that was a big one, I think, honestly, because and I think a lot of the pros who were talking said this, and I think I agreed, was that just removing Curse of Naxxramas wasn't going to be a big enough change to make. I mean, obviously it would still make an impact.
It'd be
huge cards in there like Sludge Belcher and
Zombie Chow,
Scientist.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of cards that are heavily played in Curse of Naxxramas, but it wasn't going to make a huge enough impact. And I think the biggest thing, honestly, is like we still would have had another year of Dr. Boom. I honestly think that's the big part that Blizzard internally was like, it would be great to get Dr. Boom out of there. Dr. Boom and also Piloted Shredder, because those are just they're in so many decks.
Right.
They're just they're cards that are so good that it's hard to put anything else in those decks in those slots.
Yeah, I mean, Chalky in the recent tournament he played in literally said in an interview that if you're not bringing Dr. Boom in all 4 of your decks, you're doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. And if that's like something that can be said at all, then that's a problematic card, right?
Right.
Especially at the very least, at the very least, it's problematic to keep it around for another year. Like, I'm fine with Dr. Boom having existed for as long as he has, and fine with him not being nerfed. But like, let's see something new. Let's see like a new meta evolve without him.
Sure. And also I think what Standard is going to do as well is when a card comes in that is overpowered, it's going to be less problematic just in the minds of players, just because they know, he'll only be here. This will only be there for a couple years. Mm-hmm. Not like, well, this will be here forever. Please change it. Got to change it now. It's just going to be like, well, this is just how it is now. It won't be that way.
I'm pretty sure that will still happen, though. I'm pretty sure people will still be like, for the love of God, nerf this. I don't want to deal with this card for 2 years.
But knowing that eventually it's going to go away just kind of automatically feels better, than imagining that forever and ever we will have, Undertaker, 8-mana Pyroblast, like that kind of stuff. Like the way it was when you thought that Blizzard was not ever going to change cards. Now you just know at least they're going to cycle out. Or they change it.
Yeah, and I think it puts less pressure on Blizzard to have to feel like they have to nerf stuff. Not that they have very often, but still.
Yeah. And also I think frees them up to be able to nerf things a little more often because, if the focus now is just a healthy metagame that will switch, and also the cards are going to cycle out of Standard anyway, having them feel like they can never change isn't quite as important. And I know for a long time they wanted the cards to feel like, well, I got the card, I earned the card, I have it. It's closer to a physical card than a digital card. And now it's just going to cycle out anyway. Why not just change it if it's a problem? You know, it fixes a lot of problems. It really does.
So one of the interesting debates that came up when we were at this event, and something that I talk about a lot in my article, was that a lot of people are pushing not just for goblins versus gnomes to get rotated out, but for the basic and classic sets. So the cards that are part of the original, essentially, like 300 or 400 cards, for those to get rotated as well, which Blizzard was at the event and seemingly has continued to be very much against.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm on the side of the players on this one. I like the basic cards, the ones you earn, the ones that just everyone has being in there, but I would like to see the classic cards that you get from the classic packs be rotated and maybe changed out every now and then. But that's, I'm okay with it not happening that way.
I'm definitely in the same boat. Like, if it was one of these, I can just have whatever I have, or whatever I want and make it so. Like, I would love to see just like a huge card turnover, but I see where Blizzard's coming from, saying that, if you came back to the game after taking a break for a year or two, it's nice to know at least your basic and classic cards are still intact. And I think that is a good point. I don't think it's a great point. Like, I'm not sure that's enough of an argument.
Well, it's weird too, because their solution is basically, we're going to keep all of those cards, but we're going to nerf a bunch of them. And a year from now, if we feel like there's still too many classic cards getting played, we're just going to nerf more of them. So it's almost like they recognize that in order to keep things not stale, they still need to be changing those cards. So I'm not sure quite what it is that's preventing them from taking that next step to just like committing and totally rotating them out.
Yeah, it just feels like it would just feel a little awkward if 8 years down the road, we're still seeing Alexstrasza and Tyrion and Ragnaros and those kind of cards just played in quite a lot of decks, just because they will feel completely outdated compared to everything else, right?
Bob Nerd says the card pool may also be a bit too small to cycle out the classic set. That could be.
Well,
maybe, maybe they're waiting a little bit, and then in 2 years they go, okay, it's time to actually cycle it out now.
I think that's the thing, is that if you did remove them, I think you'd have to bring a larger influx of new cards in. You might even need to have a new base set. I think that's the thing that Blizzard didn't come out and say, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is something that's in the back of their head, which is this would be very difficult to pull off. Having to come up with a new core set every year, basically.
It's hard to put yourself in the mind of a new player when you've been playing since the beginning of beta, right?
No, it really is.
That's why I was kind of excited to see Ben Brode's new Twitch stream, where he is he's doing a new free to play account, and I'm kind of like, I think for a developer especially, that seems really useful, to get in as a new account and really see what's the experience like. I know Blizzard has been talking heavily for a long time now about improving the new player experience for Hearthstone, and I think this rotation formats is the first step for that. But I think they have some much bigger plans that they need to get to.
I found it to be a positive experience to go back and start an EU account and see what that felt like, without buying stuff. Eventually, I did end up buying the adventures, because those are just like impossible to get enough gold for on a part-time played account, But essentially, everything else is all free to play. I just earned all my cards through Arena in that account, and it is a completely different experience from what I'm used to. Just to go to make a deck and be like, oh, yeah, I don't have Archmage Antonidas. Okay, what can I do? I guess I just can't make this deck. That kind of feeling is real for people who just haven't been playing since the beginning. So, I am glad that they're thinking about it. And I can't put myself in that person's shoes with a lot of accuracy. So I buy their reasoning.
I also think it's really interesting. One of the interesting things that I think Blizzard has to do is, whatever the next expansion is, the expansion that's going to introduce Standard, they're going to have to be coming at it, taking into account all the cards that are rotating out and figuring out what can we replace them with that like what stuff can we replace those cards with that accomplishes sort of the same thing but in a different way. Like somebody in the chat brought up Sludge Belcher, and they said, I'm going to really miss Sludge Belcher when I come up against a Face Hunter. Like, that's true. That was one of the reasons that Sludge Belcher is so good, is that it helped slow down hyper-aggressive decks. I'm really curious to see what the balance in the next expansion is going to be between completely new cards with stuff we've never seen before and stuff that's like clearly, oh, this is like the new Sludge Belcher, like the replacement for this thing that needs to be in the game, even if it's in a different way.
5 mana, 3/5 with the Divine Shield. Boom.
Great. Perfect.
Yep.
Different enough. Different enough to be different, as long as it's not a carbon copy.
No, I don't think it will be.
No, the thing is like Sludge Belcher is great against Face Hunter, and then they owl it, and it's like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not too concerned about these cards going away because I know that you'll find new ways to do different things, and I do see the fear when you look at it initially is like aggro is going to take over now because we're losing Healbot, we're losing Sludge Belcher, but Face Hunter's losing Mad Scientist, which is a super important card for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not like they're like no aggros they're losing stuff too. Everyone's losing something. You're gonna have to figure out new ways to do it. It's just gonna be nice to see other 2-drops besides Knife Juggler, Haunted Creeper, Mad Scientist. Like, well,
that's the thing, right? Like, everyone complains that everything is so just the same all the time. Nothing's changing, like Face Hunter is Face Hunter is Face Hunter. And then we're like, okay, well, now you can't have Mad Scientist and Sludge Belcher's going away. And they're like, oh no, everything's changing. No. It's like, well, one or the other, guys. I'm excited to see new innovation with new cards.
Yeah, me too. True and Manny in the chat says, should Blizzard do reprints? And Skydo Gaming responded and said they have said they don't plan on doing reprints. Actually, what they said is they don't have any current plans.
Yeah.
But it's something, I think their approach, and I think this is the healthy approach, their approach with a lot of the stuff with this format is essentially, we're going to do it, we're going to see what works, and if we have to adjust or change things, we're open to that. Mm-hmm. I think if you get like 3-4 years down the road, I could absolutely see them being like, hey, for the next set, we're going to be reprinting this classic card that you guys miss from Goblins versus Gnomes or wherever, or putting out a new version of that or a slightly different twist on it or something.
If they do, I would at least hope, though, that they allow people who already have it to just rotate it back in.
Oh, right. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah. I think that would be key for sure.
It's like, oh, we're putting Sludge Belcher in with new art and whatever. And it's like, well, I already have Sludge Belcher. Can I use it? Yes. Cool.
Yes. Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very likely that will happen one day.
Yeah.
I think right now, with Standard just coming in and rotation just starting, I wouldn't expect it this year or even next year, but a couple years down the road, definitely, perhaps.
Yeah, the exact quote from Broad was on Twitter. It said, "No current plans for reprints, but it certainly could happen."
Yeah. The thing is, at a certain point, when you're talking about like vanilla, there's only so many iterations you can do at, say, like 5 mana. Or 4 mana, like let's say 4 mana base is 4/5. Then you got like a 2/7, and then you got a 7/4. Like there's all these like weird things you can do. Or sorry, that's a 5 mana card. But you know what I mean. Like, eventually you run out of like combinations of stats that make sense, right? But with the way that like, there's still so much unexplored territory as far as mechanics and things like that aren't in the game yet, that I'm not concerned about them running out of cards.
Oh, for sure.
But at a certain point, an idea that worked once may work again. And do you want to limit yourself there as well? Like, well, that really did work. And with what we're doing now, would work again. If you're like, just don't limit anything. Just be like, hey, we have a digital card game. We do whatever we want, man. Whatever works right now.
And maybe at some point in the future, it's like, oh, I would love to see how Dr. Boom works with this new set of cards. Like, that would be really wild. Probably not
wild.
Yeah,
not
see
wild.
What you did
oh
there.
no, not
crazy,
wild.
That would be
crazy.
really standard. Sorry.
Yeah. There's some interesting discussion going on in the chat. Apparently, there was like a supposed leak of the next expansion, but I'm skeptical of this on Reddit
as well.
Yeah.
Did you guys get a chance to watch the?
There's been a lot of fake leaks.
Yeah.
Did you guys get a chance to watch the Curse Trials?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that later on.
Oh, great! Then I won't bring it up. Never mind.
We're talking about it.
I wasn't paying attention to the notes.
But that was an interesting preview into what Standard will not look like at all.
Yeah, I did not see this leak. I'll have to look that up later.
Mm-hmm.
We'll confirm its validity, and then we'll talk about it next week, maybe.
Yeah. Well, actually, I doubt it'll be confirmed by next week, but we'll see.
We are going. There is a Blizzard event in 2 weeks that I will be flying out to, where I think they are going to be revealing the next thing.
Fancy.
I certainly hope so.
So I thought another interesting thing that was brought up was the whole thing of cycling, like not doing 2 adventures or adventure expansion, and getting into like, okay, this is regularly what we're going to see every year, and it being 2 expansions, 1 adventure. Was that discussed at that event?
Yes, that was also discussed at the event. They put up a sort of a calendar of or a timeline, I guess you would say, of all of the releases they've had thus far, and the timeline was just showing everything, and then they had like big question marks for the stuff that was coming next. And getting into 2016 and 2017, those question marks were expansion, adventure, expansion, adventure, expansion. So essentially saying that they would like to start off and end each year with an expansion and have 1 adventure in between them. When they were questioned about that, I believe it was Trump who brought it up. They basically said, this isn't set in stone. This isn't 100% what we're going to do, but it's what they're starting to think might make the most sense and might be the best for the game. I think the idea especially is that they're going to be rotating cards out at the start of every year with that first expansion. So they want it to be an expansion and not an adventure. When they rotate a bunch of cards out, they want to have a bunch of new cards, not like 30 or 40.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
That makes so much sense. Not to mention, that really excites me just for the end of the year and the beginning of the year, where you have just 2 expansions butting up next to each other, more or less. Obviously, we're probably going to have about the same amount of time in
still
between
have months in between, I'm sure.
Right.
But yeah.
Right, but I really like the idea of having 2 expansions coming back to back, even if it's over the course of a change of the year.
I think what I'm most curious about is the timing for it. Like, does that second expansion every year, the one closer to the end of the year, does that hit before BlizzCon? Like, does that end up being something where that new expansion is like in the world finals for Hearthstone? That's what I'm really curious about.
That timing could be problematic for sure. They put it out like 2 weeks before BlizzCon, and they're like, "All right, figure it out."
That would be very much Team 5-ish, though. I mean, really.
I kind of would imagine
a big wrench
that
in your BlizzCon plans.
Yeah, I would imagine that you'd see it closer to like October-ish or something. Give people like a month to toy around with new stuff. But
yeah, I think that would be perfect to me. Because otherwise, you get that weird thing if it comes out in like November or December. You get that weird thing where there aren't going to be a lot of tournaments using that one before the next rotation.
Yeah. Very excited machine somewhere in somebody's room.
That's my upstairs neighbor's vacuum. I think this happened last time.
Did it?
Yeah.
Oh, it did. It did totally happen.
They started
last time.
vacuuming in the middle. I swear to God, they hear me doing a podcast and they're like, "Oh, he's doing something."
They
really
must
important.
be exceptionally cleanly people.
We got a vacuum right above him.
Apartment life.
What I'm really interested about this whole timing thing is that we're going to get 1 adventure per year, which means that when they rotate it out, we're only losing like 1 set of adventure material. We're not losing 2 sets of kind of solo casual play at the same time. Like right now, we could potentially lose 2 adventures, but if they're doing like 2 expansions, 1 adventure, it's going to be so much better for people concerned about losing that single player experience.
Yeah, that's a good point. Next year, 2017, we will lose 2 adventures at once. We are going to lose BlackRock and we're going to lose League of Explorers.
So many people are playing BlackRock over and over.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't stopped playing BlackRock every day.
It's going to be really sad for those people.
What's going to be really sad is Tempo Mage and Flame Waker. That's what's going to be really sad.
Well, whatever.
Dills.
Tempo Mage will be fine.
Tell me how you really feel. Yeah, whatever.
So another thing about this though that I really like is that knowing that there's going to be 2 expansions in one adventure means that we can kind of have a schedule in our brain of like when new cards are going to come, and it's not going to be like, well, whenever they decide to put out new cards, I hope it's soon. We're going to kind of know like it happens this part of the year, then this part of the year, then this part of the year, and you can really kind of look forward to those when they come, and it could feel a little bit more like I really like, getting into Magic. I really like the set release schedule. And knowing that, okay, these cards are out, and then you're already looking forward to the next stuff as you're kind of playing with the current set. And I've actually really enjoyed that aspect of it. And I want that to exist in Hearthstone, a little bit more structured, a little bit more, just we all know, we're aware that these cards are here, and pretty soon it's going to be infused with a bunch of new stuff. And you know it's coming, and you know about when it's coming. I think that's going to be really healthy for the game.
Yeah, that starts to dip in a little bit of the topics that were brought up the last time Ben Bro did a developer insight, which was how far out do you promote something? Because I would love to know what the next expansions are and what like the themes are going to be, and maybe start getting like little previews of cards here and there. It's very much akin to what Magic does, but at the same time, now that I know that Standard is coming. Guys, I'm so burnt out on Hearthstone right now. I get it. I'm just
you
like,
guys were talking about the beginning of the
I
game.
don't care. Like,
so.
I just want the new stuff.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm of two minds. Like, I would love to have a better idea of what is coming, but at the same time, it definitely affects my personal morale in the game.
I feel like it would be better if we knew what was coming and we had a date tied to it. Like, we talked about when this was first announced, spring 2016, is that like March 20th or is that like June 20th? Because that's a really big window. So do you think it would help the way that you feel about the game to know like, okay, even within a month, say like new expansion coming April, would that make you feel better even if it was announced way ahead of time?
I think for some people,
ways.
yes.
Okay.
I think for some people, no. I think it's going to depend wildly. Because, like, for me, in a game that is, I feel very unrelated at this point, even though it's the source material, in World of Warcraft, when I hear about an expansion, I know it's a year out at least, usually by the time they actually announce the darn thing. But my brain immediately starts firing off like, oh, I'm going to work on this profession. And I start making all these personal plans on how I'm going to prepare for it to kind of fill the time. Or I just stop playing for a little while.
But I think that what's happened with World of Warcraft right now is that it's just the current version is too long in the tooth. And it's not like it has, my play time in World of Warcraft has nothing to do with the fact that I know Legion's coming. It just has to do with I'm just done with what World of Warcraft is right now. And I think with Hearthstone, as long as the expansions come short enough time between each other, that will never happen. Like that burnout moment will never actually get there because by the time it starts to feel that, as like once you start to go, oh man, I'm so tired of this deck, it's already like close to a new set coming out, And I think that's the schedule that you would shoot for if you're Team 5, is to make sure that no one ever feels burnt out because there's always something new right around the corner. And 3 releases a year is going to feel that way, at least to me. Maybe some people want more, some people want less. But to me, that seems like that's the sweet spot, as far as I can tell.
I kind of wish it was 4. I feel like once every 3 months, because you kind of get 1 month to play around and then kind of have fun with all the new stuff. Month 2 is really like sit down and, go crazy, grind hard. And then month 3 is kind of like that burnout period for me where I'm kind of like, now I want new stuff. So then having another month 4 of burnout for me, like, I don't know, that I feel like I that 3 month
yeah, but that's when you play
just,
wild,
and that's
then you go like, all right,
that's true.
I just go check out this.
I
I think
my personal schedule, anyways, how my kind of tempo within Hearthstone. That's usually how it goes.
Yeah, I think it would bother me more if they didn't have Tavern Brawl. Tavern Brawl has really helped for me because when I do get a little bit bored with whatever the current meta is, I'll just go to playing Tavern Brawl or go to playing Arena. I think honestly, like more modes and stuff are something I'd like to see more if they're gonna like have a longer break between whatever the new additions are.
I agree. I want to point something else out that you put here in this article, and that is that when they started their conversation with you guys, Team 5 literally brought up Magic the Gathering. So everyone who sends us emails about how we need to stop talking about Magic the Gathering, you just shut up right now.
Even Team 5 talks about Magic.
It's very clear that this game is influenced by Magic, and that the Team 5 people are aware of that being the top card game in the world.
They literally they have people who worked on Magic the Gathering working.
Yeah,
on
like
Hearthstone.
come on, guys,
Like,
just settle.
There's no. I mean, I think Blizzard was actually a little bit nervous about the fact that I put that in my article.
Oh, really?
I got like a thing from from one of their PR people that was like, could you maybe remove those references? And I'm like, no, I can't. What? I was like, you guys sent those. It was off the record.
My delete
or
button
on the record.
My delete button fell off
You're
on
not
the
supposed
keyboard.
to say stuff that's off the record.
Yeah, no, it was on the record. But I was just, it was a weird and I was like, I don't think anybody cares. Also, like, it's just like, yes, it's a card game. You look at Magic the Gathering, of course.
The thing is, they influence each other at this point. If anyone who's played the new Magic Duels game can definitely see that Hearthstone has influenced what Magic is now doing in their online space. Things like daily quests and stuff. I mean, that is like ripped straight out of Hearthstone as far as a card game is concerned. And
Hachikumo in the chat notes that Team 5 talked about Magic the Gathering when they explained the reason they made Hearthstone.
Yeah, I think the video of them talking about coming up with Hearthstone showed like images of them sitting on the floor playing Magic.
Oh yeah. There was Mike Morheim sitting in his sweet ass jean shorts playing Magic on the ground. It was the
I like how
best
they decided
photo.
that the ground is where they were going to play, rather than it's like you guys probably have desks and tables and stuff.
Listen,
man.
they had to make a
Play on the
lot of
ground.
cutbacks at Blizzard. It's rough times there right now.
It was
They're really
humble beginnings.
struggling.
It was humble beginnings of Blizzard, man. They could afford computers, but they couldn't afford desks to put them on. All right, all they have is a floor. Which, when you think about it, it's just like the world's biggest table. It's so big you can stand on it.
That's true. Very good point. Very good point. It's funny to me because we talk about it on this show as a tool to compare, right? As a way to kind of see where Hearthstone lives in the world of card games, and it's just I don't get why people think we shouldn't talk about it. It's so weird to me. Whatever. Now put it to rest.
I think what we should do is continue poking those people with virtual sticks. I think that's I
definitely.
think that's the goal here.
Forever.
Yep, forever and ever. Now, the whole article as a whole is really, really interesting, and I really recommend folks go read the thing in full. Especially, I was really intrigued by the point that Denai brought up about exit points, and that's all I'll say to hopefully intrigue our listeners to go and read the entire article. So. We can we can move on and talk about some esports now, which Phil, I believe you were super eager to talk about.
I like esports.
Do you like
Esports are a thing.
Do you like the esports?
You want to talk about League of Legends? Is that
No, I don't.
We're talking about CS:GO, League of Legends.
Literally any other esport I could talk about somewhat with any type of understanding. And League, I would just be like, I don't know.
I play it, and that's how I would be as well.
Oh, okay. I just go, that's the one that's not Dota or Heroes or any of the other games I actually play. Okay, cool. But we had a lot of tournaments over the past week. We had the Hearthstone Championship Tour, or whatever they're calling it now, HCT, because
I know.
When you
why
Google
change the hashtag?
I don't know. Also, when you Google it, I just get a bunch of HTC Hearthstone tournament stuff popping up. So good job on your SEO there, guys. But it's basically the Hearthstone World Championship that we're all used to. The American Winter Preliminaries happened this past weekend. And unlike the European ones, although somewhat like it, wasn't entirely no-name players that made the top four, but quite a few lesser-known players made it, and Chucky.
Well, Fibonacci's very well known.
Oh, and Fibonacci, sorry.
Yeah, but he's a well-known ladder player.
Yeah,
he's not necessarily a well-known tournament player at this point, but he kind of showed his chops with other decks, which has been, I think, his downfall before. He's such a warrior specialist that when it's time to play druid, he struggles a little bit. So, but he turned it around. He had a freeze mage, a druid, and of course his warrior, which I think was banned every round. He said, except for one. Which is with bans now, like he has to be good at other decks. He can't just get by being a specialist in one play. I think Kit Kats ran into a similar issue because also considered a warrior specialist. But also, if you look in the top 8, we had Amnesiac, who is the 15-year-old Hearthstone prodigy from Team Archon, make it. And so all the top 8 qualified for the next phase.
And poor Admirable.
Yeah.
Coming in
he
at
got
9th.
so close.
He got so close.
Yeah, he was killing it. And then, Hearthstone.
Yeah.
Stone.
Yeah, we just had him on last week, so we'll have to bring him back on again to talk about this, just so I can poke him and be like, what was it like to get so close?
Well, but everybody
He'll
who
be back.
participated, yeah, they get points towards the spring. So
Right.
he's probably going to be fairly close to qualifying for the spring preliminaries just by placing so high in the winters. So we should see more of Admirable.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I was really excited to see Chalky get through. It's funny because he gets a bad rap because like the BM stuff and all that, but he's a really, really smart guy, and he embraces a different style of play than I think a lot of people do in tournaments, and does well with it. And I've been a fan of his just because he's just a different type of player, and I really like watching his and the innovations he comes up with in the aggro decks. I think are really interesting, and they like inform a lot of what you see in aggro on the ladder too. You need players like that. I think you need players who don't just come with a bunch of control decks and freeze mage. You need players who are doing all the things. So represent all the various aspects of Hearthstone.
Well said.
And sometimes he just runs you over with leper gnomes.
Yep.
Great.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Wind Furied Sea Giants, because that was
He
a thing
does
too.
do that too. Yeah. It was crazy. Like he found a way to beat freeze mage with Zoo, which isn't supposed to happen.
I
but
love his zoo deck. I love right now. By the way, it's about the only thing I can get excited about in Constructed Hearthstone right now, because everything is so damn figured out. But I love that we're seeing Enhanso Mechanos in everyone's zoo deck right now. I don't love it when it works against me, but still, the fact that that's even a thing this late in the game, like just in time for Enhanso Meccano to be torn away from us.
Oh, I know. Yeah, it's one of those things that came from the Chinese meta and totally stuck because it works. Sometimes the Chinese players have come up with really, really crazy stuff that's out of the norm and totally works. And it's cool to see it kind of, because a lot of their decks do come from some of the NA stuff, and then they tweak it and do their weird, like everything is a tech card type of stuff with them. But it's cool to see it come the other direction now. And Handsome Meccano is very much a Chinese zoo deck, so now it's here.
Yeah.
For a little while. And then go.
Yeah, because Enhanso comes out of GVG, right?
Yes, it's a
so
meta.
it'll be gone in the spring.
Yep.
It'll be gone.
Face. Sad face.
Not in Wild, though. That's going to be one of
that's
those
true.
cards that's always going to be in Wild, I think. Just because it's going to make other cards that eventually happen, it's going to be completely broken with some of the decks you'll end up with in Wild.
And I remember seeing the GVG spoilers and being like, "Oh my god, I can't wait to muster and with a Hobgoblin on board and then slap down and Handsome Meccano." And 2 of 3 of those things actually worked well
It
together.
happened all the time, right?
yeah, well, Hobgoblin didn't work at all because they don't.
Coin Hobgoblin
doesn't work
into
on
Muster
summons.
into an Handsome
It
Meccano.
doesn't work on summons. But yeah, I slapped an Enhanso Meccano on my mid-range paladin immediately. And at the time I was like, this is so much fun, and then I realized this is really dumb. I was winning anyway. But
Did you actually try the Hobgoblin into Muster once?
I did.
And
I
then
did.
realized, like,
I was so
this
depressed.
doesn't work.
that was, I think, the saddest I have ever been in the history of Hearthstone.
I do want to throw in here, speaking of Goblins versus Gnomes spoilers, I looked at this rumor for this supposed leak for the next expansion.
Oh yeah, I have it up too.
I don't want to ruin anything for anyone. Can I swear? Can I swear on this?
You know what? You've given enough warning, so
Garrett can click you.
kids hide your parents, or parents hide your kids,
Sure.
whichever you
Either
prefer.
way.
Either
way.
I think that this expansion leak is bullshit.
Ah,
You think, huh?
And I don't want to shock anybody. So the rumor is that it's an expansion called Whispers of the Old Gods. And it is
Oh.
old god themed. That seems way too serious for Hearthstone.
if this is, oh man, yeah. Unless it's like the old gods throwing a party at the tavern, like Yogg-Saron's sitting there with a bunch of little party hats on all of his little mouths. Like, I don't think that's happening.
What are you talking about? Yogg-Saron like farts all around his room. That's completely.
Hearthstone.
You have to, like, kiss his girlfriend. Like, I don't. It's totally fine. This fits right in.
Oh man.
Oh my God, Dills, you need to work on Team 5 just so you can Hearthstoneify really serious
think it's
things from
probably-
WoW lore.
I think
Here's
it's
the
probably
idea
made
for
up.
the legendary Yogg-Saron card. It farts all over the game board. Anything where the cloud lands, you summon a crazy tentacle monster that comes running at you.
No, you've got to play 4 different Titans, and then when they die, they summon Yogg-Saron.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
See, I'm really good at lore, you guys.
That's how you play.
I know what happens.
That's how you play Yogg-Saron. No, that sounds like total BS. It also sounds like this reminds me of every time someone tries to guess a WoW expansion. It used to always there were 2 things. It was like, oh, it's definitely gonna be Emerald Dream, or it's definitely gonna be Undermine. Everyone, Yarr. It's like never was, never will be.
Yep.
So. But I could be wrong, and
it could be kind of cool, old god celestial type stuff. But I don't know. I always feel like the old gods just probably aren't going to happen anytime soon. I'm actually surprised that we got to Legion, because like that's like the big bad, like be all end all. Like what do they do after that? So I feel like if Hearthstone did like gods or Legion, it's just like, well now what? It's so big, it's so endgame.
Well, they do what they've always done, and death was merely a setback.
Yeah, you just bring them back. Yeah,
just bring them back.
Burning Legion will just go back into their portal, and then you know, a couple years later, my God, they're back.
We brought back how many
the
dead orcs?
Twisting Nether expansion.
Yeah, I mean it's only a matter of time for.
Says Explorer's Hat Yogg-Saron meta incoming.
That's
it.
I'm gonna put an Explorer's Hat on my Yogg-Saron. So that makes sense.
But a bunch of them on Yogg-Saron because he has so many little.
It's
mouths.
already pretty funny when you put it on a Kraken. I mean, if you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's
I
pretty
should
great.
just make that deck is like just the things that would never wear hats deck, and then I just put hats on them all.
Also, I think about it a lot, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part about Explorer's Hat is just thinking about the card that I put on wearing hats.
Actually,
and when I
putting a
stack
hat on it?
Explorer's hats, that's my favorite, because then I'm thinking about him wearing multiple hats.
Yep.
That's the thing I do when I clean out the car and I realize I left 4 hats in the back of the car and I don't have enough stuff. I can't
all
hold
on your
them.
head.
I just put them all on my head and walk in because my hands are full.
Sure.
That's what happens. Let's talk about the Curse Trials tournament that happened before we go any further down this ridiculous rabbit hole we find ourselves in. This was the Archon Run tournament. They used the Conquest format, but the big selling point here was that Curse of Naxxramas and Goblins vs. Gnomes were banned. Those entire expansions and adventures were not allowed to be used in this tournament. And I gotta say, guys, my gut reaction this is dumb. We're not.
Well, wasn't it something else originally, and then after the announcement they changed it to this, or was this always what it was? I can't remember now.
I don't.
Because obviously Amaz knew about this change coming before they created this tournament, right? But
right.
I thought it was like something else. They were like they were doing some like weird banning thing. But then they were just like, oh no, we'll just do standard. And so this was what standard will never be. But if it did exist now, this is what it would be.
Right. I thought it was really silly because, well, A, we're not having any of the nerfs to basic and classic cards, and the huge B, there's not an expansion bringing in a ton of new cards.
Yes.
To do this with.
Oh, here they go. In chat, Stefan Hack says first they were going to ban classic and basic cards.
Classic and basic.
So it's going to be
gotcha.
everything after, and then they changed it to just whatever standard is going to be.
Gotcha. Okay. But I will say, despite my initial gut reaction, there were some really fun games to watch because the decks were weird and different. Although still saw a ton of druids with Savage and Roar and
yeah.
I mean, I think that was the big thing about it, though, was that it really this tournament helped sell the idea of standard format to me, just as a like, oh, this is going to shake things up. This is going to lead to some really different, weird things, some big changes in the meta, which I like,
and some really, really crazy games.
Yeah,
because the thing is, it's even if Druid, everyone had a Druid, and Druid basically won almost all of its games. Even though that was true, when it came to decks 2 and 3, which you had to come up with, people did have to get a little bit more creative. We saw a lot of Priest. All of a sudden, that became a much more viable deck. And things like with Warrior not having Death Bite, you kind of had to it moved more back to like a control warrior that played like dragon control kind of stuff. And you just saw people just coming up with interesting ideas when you lose like really, really key cards that have come out of GVG. A lot less aggro too. Obviously, like Druid was still there, but without all of those GVG cards, there was just a lot less aggro because aggro just wasn't going to work as well. So many aggro cards are in GVG. And you saw basically the most epic game I think I've ever seen in my life in a competitive tournament, which was the final game of the whole damn thing.
Yep. For once, the finals live up to everything that came before it.
Yeah. It was nuts. I mean, if anybody hasn't seen it, like I kind of don't want to just talk about what happened on it.
I was gonna say, I
People should
actually
just
haven't
go watch
seen it.
I haven't
was-
watched it yet, so please don't
Yeah.
spoil it.
Cool.
I
Well,
was
let's just.
streaming. I know what the outcome was, but I don't actually know what happened
Yeah.
in the game yet. So
Like, it came down to the final card.
Yeah,
It
was
really
it Savage Roar?
No, it was something else.
I'm fairly certain Dills wouldn't be talking about it with as many F's to give in his voice that he currently is if it came down to Savage Roar or Force of Nature.
Just
Yeah.
lots of really like crazy turns where nobody knows what the correct move is, and even the pros didn't know what the correct move was because there were situations that had never ever come up before in Hearthstone. So it was amazing. I really really recommend just go watch it. God, we won't tell you what happened. Just go watch it.
This is why I want to read at tournaments. I want to see weird stuff. I
Yeah.
want it. Damn
I'm
it.
sure that's probably something that we'll see eventually, Garrett.
Yeah, I'll probably be like, I don't know,
I'm sure it's on the
68
list somewhere.
when it finally comes. But yeah, 68-year-old Garrett will be really happy about competitive arena.
Old man Garrett, I told you this was a good
I
idea.
told you it was coming here on The Angry Chicken episode 1000 and God knows what. I don't know numbers anymore. I also kind of talk like Deckard Cain. But
Don't we all when we get old?
a little bit, apparently, yeah.
That's standard old person voice.
That's what you get down into. Before we move on to crazy game stories, let's thank our patrons over at patreon.com/TAC for supporting the show. We do Brawl episodes because of you guys. We do our call-in episodes, which are happening next Monday because of you guys. So thank you guys very much. On this episode, we wanted to thank Mayak L, Mike C, Gary I, Patrick K, Troy G, Matthew, Blaze M, and Luke N. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show. And while we're thanking, we might as well thank Squarespace.com as well for supporting this episode of The Angry Chicken. You can go to squarespace.com right now, build yourself an awesome website, use the code TAC at checkout, and get 10% off your first order. So go do that, because amove.tv is a Squarespace site. So you're listening to a podcast right now that's kind of sort of coming to you through Squarespace. I mean, there's other things involved, but what I'm trying
directly through Squarespace, from our mouth to your ears, The Angry Chicken.
beaming into your head via Squarespace telepathy. There
Did
you
I
go.
ever tell you about the time where
Oh,
I
no.
left my father's company for like 7 years, and then my dad was giving his daughter, my sister, a really stupid award that meant nothing. So I decided to come back, do a fun little dance to "Here Comes the Money," and challenge the Undertaker at WrestleMania to a Hell in the Cell match.
Ah,
I did it all through Squarespace.com.
that's where you were going with that.
Oh man, I thought we weren't gonna get a story.
I thought we
I
weren't
was
either.
so worried there for a minute.
And when it started, I thought it was going to be another movie spoiler
Spoiler, yeah.
hidden in a Squarespace rant, but instead, no, it was a WWE analogy. Well played, Dills. Well played.
Greatest moment in the last 2 weeks of WWE, right there.
I've been
Oh, that's
following
nice.
recently.
Totally thought for a second it was Hearthstone. I was like, you're challenging Undertaker. What?
By the way, I use for anyone who doesn't know, I'm talking about Shane O'Mac, Vince McMahon's son, coming back, and I use his theme song when people donate more than $10 in my stream. So I hear his song quite a bit. And when I was watching Raw and then the song started, I was like, "Oh my God, this is the greatest song!
I'm
Just gave me
rich.
$10." Yeah,
The WWE just backed me on Twitch.
yeah.
It's amazing.
But then instead, it was just Shane O'Mac coming out. It was awesome.
It was real awesome.
Absolutely wonderful. Let's take a crazy game story.
whole world gone crazy.
You're in trouble now.
You got it.
Send your crazy game stories to tacpodcast@gmail.com. The story today comes to us from Synonyms, and this actually comes to us from our subreddit at tacpodcast.reddit.com. Synonyms, that is not easy to say, writes, "Let me set the scene for you. There I was doing battle with one of those super obnoxious fatigue priests who love to buff their taunt minions to absurd health amounts while smugly saying thanks after every single one of my plays. He was at 25 health thanks to Justicar and Lightwell shenanigans earlier in the game, despite my best efforts to try and get him dead before he could pull it off. I was on the ropes with 6 health left. He had a buff Deathlord and 2 Lightwells on board. On his turn, he drops a second Deathlord. My heart sinks, knowing full well if I didn't act fast, the priest would probably commence inner fire shenanigans soon, and it'd all be over. I sigh as I draw an Azure Drake. I'm ready to give up the ghost. I decided to at least get the last laugh in on the priest before kicking the bucket by destroying his newest minion on the board, the second Death Lord. I use swipe and attack, and with his dying breath, the priest Death Lord pulls forth from my deck the aspect of magic himself, Malygos. Immediately my morale is raised at the sight of the sudden appearance of the aspect of magic, for now I might just stand a chance against the priest. I plonk down my Azure Drake, and he pulls forth from my deck my second Moonfire. I knew what had to be done. I called forth Living Roots to entangle the cocky priest so he couldn't escape while dealing 9 damage in the process. I then called down 2 heavenly beams of Moonfire on him with the force of a fully charged Void Ray beam, which once the dust settled had left nothing but a smoldering crater where my opponent had once stood. Moral of the story here, kiddies, no amount of healing is going to save you from being nuked from orbit. Oh my god. 1,000,000 internet points for the Void Ray StarCraft reference.
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
Yeah. And rank 18 is so much funner than rank 8.
Right?
Yeah.
It really is.
I make the mistake every single month of like ranking up to where all the tryhards are, and I never get to do stuff like this. So sad.
You could just do stuff like this and then
I
fall
can't,
all the way back down.
There aren't priests
You can
playing
get to
like
rank
double
18
Death
pretty
Lord.
easily.
Yeah, they're not playing double Death Lord Lightwell stuff.
Shenanigans.
Yeah.
There's no shenanigans.
But there's a good chance that you might see a Death Lord still.
No, Death Lord's still there. Yeah,
and Death Lord could still pull out your Malygos if you're running one.
That's true. That is true.
Although, everything going on in here, he's running Moonfire. Like, I don't think this is a deck
Well, he's
I'd
doing.
recommend.
Yeah,
at the
he's
high
clearly
end.
doing like Miracle Druid. Was what it sounds like to me. Which is a deck I tried. I messed around with. The problem is there's not enough spells that go face in Druid. So by the time you like get to that point where you actually have Malygos, you've had to use them all as like removal in most cases. So then you have like nothing. And you're like, oh, I got Moonfires. Okay, so I could deal 18 or 16 damage or something like that. It's like not that much. It's and it just doesn't work. But it worked here. So congratulations.
I experimented with Miracle Druid once. It was in college. It was a weird time.
It's a fun deck, but it just doesn't. It doesn't have. You don't have like eviscerates. You don't have prep eviscerate, which is just so much better.
Well, let's wrap this up with an email or 2 or 3.
Hello.
Hello, it's me.
Hello.
Just quickly, do you get my message?
Yep.
Oh,
Hello, brother.
Same place. Send your emails to techpodcast@gmail.com. Sam's our first writer today, and he says, hello, casters. While listening to your last podcast on my daily commute, I thought a thought stirred in my mind. Do you ever think Blizzard would add pre-made decks you can buy like Magic or any other CCG? What are your thoughts on this idea, and would you support it? I know this has come up, but probably a long time ago at this point on the show. If they haven't done it already, I'd be surprised if it ever came, but I'd be all for it.
I
feel like it's something that we might see now that standard is a thing. Like, kind of like, oh, coming back to Hearthstone by Zoolock or something.
Yeah,
I could see them doing something like that. I think it'd be pretty cool.
If
I think
Kibler,
we have talking about this. You could have
Have
decks
we?
that are made by
Remember.
pros. You could have like
yeah,
Trump's Handlock or Savitz's Druid or whatever it is. And then when you're fresh to the game, you just like buy it. It's like similar to say the packages you get heroes, where it's like if you already own some stuff, it just gets discounted, and then it's just like so you buy it, and then it's like a deck slot appears. It has the deck all pre-built for you, and then you can just do whatever you want with it. But you at least like for people who don't net deck, this would be the way to go. Oh, that's what a deck should look like, I guess. And it'll give them a couple of cool things, which is one, maybe fill out like, oh, I need 2 Ancients of Lore to actually like build a Druid deck. Although this is not what Druids will look like eventually, but those are epic cards, right? They cost a lot to craft. If I could just buy all of them and just have the deck, that would be nice. But also we'll like show them what a good deck looks like compared to like the garbage that they present to you in the basic decks in the game right now. Which are just, I don't know if you've looked at those recently, but oh my god,
man, Dills, you're really with the brave statements there, taking shots at the
taking shots at the basic
decks.
Yeah. But it does 2 good things, I think, for new players. I really like it in Magic when you can buy the Clash decks. I think it's a great idea. It's a great way to get into the game if you don't play it.
Yeah,
they're like 2 decks that are designed to play against each other, right? So Like, let's say
Oh, cool.
it's like two people who don't really know how to play. It's like, here's a deck already, made for you, and then here's another one that's balanced to play against it. So
Yeah,
then
so
you can like sit there
you're
and play.
going to have a lot of good back and forth. You know, you're not
Yeah.
just going to steamroll each other, unless of course, well, it is Magic, so you can just draw land and brick, or
Yeah,
just
sure.
draw minions and brick.
That will still happen.
But
But no, it's great for like kitchen table Magic, where you just want to just play to play Magic and figure it out. It works. It works really well for new players to get the idea behind like, put a lot of things that work together into a deck. Got it. That's not obvious to new players, things like synergy and stuff don't make sense, and they do after you see it happen live, right?
yeah.
What do you think, Phil? Any thoughts on pre-made decks?
I think it's a cool idea. Like we talked about earlier, I think one of the biggest challenges that Blizzard is facing right now is making that new player experience better and figuring out not only how to bring in new people, but how to help people who return to the game after they've been away for some time. And I think that's a brilliant way to do it. I have a lot of coworkers who I'm the one person at Polygon who's always playing Hearthstone, who's playing it constantly, but I have a lot of coworkers who come in and out when there's new expansions. And I think something like this would really help them get back in. The problem would be just, making sure that it's not the perfect deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
You still want to make it something where maybe it's like the handlock deck, but there's a couple things that could probably be optimized.
Sure. Well, the way they do it in the Magic stuff is it'll have like one really good card, right? So it'll have like one. It's the what are these? Just rares, right? That's what they call it in Magic, just rares.
Rares, and there there's mythics.
Mythic rares, yeah.
Mythic rares.
So it'll have like one like foil rare card. So I guess the translation in Hearthstone would be like, yeah, you get like, here's a mid-range paladin. It has Tyrion, so it's like you also get Tyrion. And then, you don't have like the perfect build of mid-range paladin. You still have room to improve upon it. But you get like one really good card and a deck that's actually okay. And some other kind of like epics and rares.
I think that's a very solid solution, especially if those are reasonably priced. I think they've also talked about like just putting in more ways to get packs, especially for new players and returning players, like just having ways for people to get a lot more packs easily.
Another thing they could really do is improve that deck builder. I don't think they've touched that thing since the beginning of the game, and I
agree with you, and I'm actually a little bit worried about how that's going to change as they keep adding stuff, because they've basically said that the way it's going to work, you can press a button so that it's only going to show you wild or standard stuff, but normally you're just going to see everything.
Okay.
And as soon as you put a wild card into your deck, it just becomes wild.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound ideal.
That doesn't sound right. Yeah. but the problem is like what it does is all it cares about is when you're doing that deck builder thing, all it seems to care about is curve and spell to minion ratio. And and the problem with that is that there's a lot more things that matter. Like when you just click the random thing, I like that that's like pretty random, because that's what makes that fun, right? That it's just super weird, and you're like, oh my god, I got weapon buffing cards in my druid deck, and that's just funny. But when you're doing that deck builder thing, it should never be giving you cards that shouldn't belong in your class and stuff like that. And sometimes that does happen still.
Absolutely.
So I would like to see that be a little bit better of a tool for new players. It doesn't make sense if you really know what the hell's going on. And a new player might think this is what a deck should look like, and that's bad.
Yeah, I'd love to see it suggest cards based on like what the archetype you're building around. Like if you put in, say you start with a bunch of cheap minions, and it recognizes like, oh, you probably want to go down the zoo path, and
sure,
and it has
or be
tooltips
able
that
to
reflect
say
that.
like what you want at the beginning. Like tell it like I want to build aggro, I want to build control, I want to build mid range.
Yeah, that would I mean that's opened up I think a whole new can of worms of adding like UI features that basically the game itself is accepting the existence of archetypes and trying to teach players about archetypes, because that's something right now the game ignores entirely.
Yeah, but Blizzard doesn't, but the game itself does. Yeah,
right.
No, I agree. But I also think though it's like a game that can educate new players like the best it can is always a good thing in my mind. Now World of Warcraft has the adventure journal and stuff like that, and it actually like tells you like where you should be going, what you should be doing. Got the trials before you can even get into the 5-man dungeons. You have to go prove that I can kill some minions in a timely manner. I like that. I think games should aim to educate their players a little bit more on what actually exists within the game, and take away the need to go outside of the game to like third-party websites.
Ringusu says that the deck building should at least support 3 different types of decks: aggro, mid-range, and control.
Yeah,
I like
there you
that
go.
idea a lot.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying. Yeah,
Tell it like, and you really, that would be cool.
That would be so helpful. Like, speaking as someone who came to Hearthstone with like 0 card knowledge at all, just learning like what aggro, mid-range, control, like zoo, freeze, like all these different things, it was so overwhelming. Even just the concept of like tempo was overwhelming when I first started to play. And like for a long time, like I had no idea what you guys were talking about. I'm like, this card has cool art, I'm going to try that one. Like, and because there was absolutely nothing in the game that gave you any kind of indication of, you know, what was good, what was bad, and what things went together in kind of like a cohesive deck that had synergies. Just if they just talked about something like that, like these go together to do this goal, that would be so helpful for new players, like completely new to card game players.
yeah, I agree. And Hearthstone has, I think, the biggest number of new to card game players of any existing card game. If you look at Magic Duels, they actually kind of do something like this. They have like a deck building tool that's at the beginning. You say like the colors you want, and it tells you kind of like what these colors should do. Like it's like, okay, you're trying to build like a token deck, and then it says we need cards that generate tokens, and then it takes you down that path of doing that. And like right now, like nothing in Hearthstone tells you anything at all. Like it just kind of puts you out in the world and says, all right, go get smashed in the face for a really long time, and then go to tempostorm.com and learn to become legendary. And that's like how it works. And a lot of players aren't going to know that. They're not going to. I would say the majority of players, and this is completely a guess, but the majority of people playing this game don't go to Twitch, don't go to the internet, don't go to the subreddit, don't go anywhere, don't look up anything. They just play the game, and then they just get frustrated quite a bit. And they smash through that barrier, or they don't. Or they hit the exit point, which is getting smashed in the face.
Yeah, exactly. And I think because chat room is suggesting maybe making it part of the tutorial, and I think it needs to be something outside of almost like an advanced tutorial. Like you can play through the basic one and then jump right into casual or ranked if you want to, or you could say, oh, I want to learn about deck building, click the deck building teach me button. You know, like, because I can see if making the tutorial much longer would probably be a bit of a deterrent. Like, okay, I just want to get in and play my friend now who invited me to play the game in the first place. Yeah. I can see, if they have a really, really long time before they can actually get in there, then that could be a problem. But I don't see a problem with kind of doing some separate tutorials on some more advanced topics.
I agree with all of that.
Yep, I'm on board.
Well, take the next email, Dills.
Yeah, I think first we have to say goodbye to Phil.
We do.
Yeah,
oh, no.
Unfortunately.
I need to bounce a little bit early. I apologize for that.
Oh, no worries,
Thank you guys
man.
so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you
Absolutely,
coming.
man.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes, and please go read that feature on Polygon.com.
Tell people where to find all your stuff before you go.
Yeah, if you go to Polygon.com, up on the top bar, you can click features, and it'll be one of the top features there, this big Hearthstone and community piece, and I would love to hear what everybody thinks. You can let me know what you think by following me on Twitter. I'm twitter.com/pkollar. That's PKOLLAR.
Awesome.
Thanks again, guys. Really
Awesome.
appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us again, Phil. Always great having you.
Yeah, see you later.
Have a good one. Now, let's see if
Okay,
I can...
next
Oh, yeah,
email.
look at that. Smooth as butter.
Wow, such a pro. Everything was really professional until you
Pointed it out how
Talked about it.
professional it was. Yeah.
That's I don't like to set I don't like to set the bar too high. I don't like to leave it too high. I like to put it up there and then bring it down a notch or two right afterwards.
Makes sense to me. All right, this one comes from Governor Ian K. He says, salutations, irritated road crossers. Wow.
That's a new one.
I really
people are
like
getting
that
really,
one.
really imaginative to get there.
I
and
like that one a
it.
lot.
Yeah. I've got a question for you. How do I get better at Hearthstone if I don't know what I'm doing wrong? I'm relatively new to the game, and I feel like I get the general strategy of my decks. The decks I use are lists I found from sites you have suggested on your show. However, I always seem to stall out between ranks 15 to 12 with a peak of rank 10. I want to get better, but I don't know how to identify my mistakes and correct them. Most games feel like either I got a better draw or my opponent did. Pretty sure there is more to winning than that most of the time. Anyways, any advice would be greatly appreciated. Thanks.
I think Ian should just wait until they implement everything we just talked about seconds ago.
Sure. Yeah, just stop playing Hearthstone for a while.
It's a fool's errand right now, Ian.
I'll say this though. First things first. Like, don't feel like you suck if you're getting to rank 10. That's pretty good, man.
Yeah.
Ben Brode himself came on the show. Was like, guys, like, rank 10 is good. Rank 15 is good. Like, there's a lot of people who are way below that, and you don't think about it because you're watching pro players on Twitch get to legend within like the first week of the season.
75% of the player base falls below rank 15.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
because I think we got an email last week or something saying, and I don't think we used it on the show, but basically saying like, I think there's like a glitch or something because I finished at rank 15 and it told me I was in the top 20% of players. Like, is that real? Like,
Yes.
yep,
Yes, it is.
That is real.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely real. That's something I feel. I don't know. It's gonna get off topic real fast, but I'm gonna say something I feel that has been lost with like the advent of Twitch and this obscene level of connectivity we have. Because think back in the day, man, we were all sitting around playing like Smash Brothers or Pokemon. We didn't get to see the best player at all hours of the day, showing us exactly how terrible we were at the game. It all came down to you and your circle of friends.
Yeah, like if you beat your buddy, then you were the best.
Yeah.
I'm the best, but there's people out there, who are learning how to like wave dash and stuff, and you're like, what is that? So first things first is I think like cut yourself some slack, Ian. You're doing pretty good, man. And outside of that, I think you maybe want to start just tracking your games and trying to analyze at the end of your games like where you think you might have made a mistake. And if you did make a mistake, or like try to like keep track after turns too, and be like, oh, that was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. And then like note like, okay, I made like 3 mistakes and I lost that game, or I made 1 mistake and I won this game. Like, so less mistakes is better, right? And then it's really just concentrating on making less mistakes. Make sure you're thinking about what the opponent might play the next turn. That's a really, really big thing that I think a lot of people don't kind of connect with until much later in the process. But if you start to concentrate on it now, it's turn 5 is coming up for a Druid. Druid of the Claw is a very likely thing that they're going to play. So think about when you're on turn 4, like if that happens next turn, will I be able to deal with it? If I make this play, what if I make this play? Will then I be able to deal with it? That kind of stuff is really important. So just start to think about the next turn for the opponent, and then eventually you'll start to think about 2-3 turns in the future, and it'll become a little more obvious. But outside of that, I mean, just keep playing and go easy on yourself, man. It sounds like you're doing great.
Yeah. Think about, the question I always ask myself, A, what am I doing next turn before I play the current turn? And B, what could ruin my day right now?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going turn 6 against a priest? Do they have Light Bomb? Turn 7 against a mage? Do they have Flame Strike?
And can I even play around it? Like,
yeah. And should it matter? Like, do I even have a choice? Am I going to win the game if I don't commit? Overcommitting your board state against a shaman, it's like, well, he could roll spell damage totem, and Lightning Storm is pretty much always a threat when you're going up against a shaman. Unless you're face shaman, but
right now, not so much.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
But yeah, so it's just think about the cards that exist in the current meta and the cards you're seeing a lot, and just pay attention to what people are playing and just try to understand what's likely to happen next turn, and that'll improve your play quite a bit. Outside of that, like the mulligan phase and the deck building phase are going to be some of your bigger ways to improve. Mulliganing properly depending on the class you're up against and the likely matchup is really important. That's not obvious information, but again, it's like think about what you did and think about like whether that was good or not after like you get into the game a little bit. Go like, well, maybe I should have kept this, maybe I shouldn't have kept that. That kind of stuff is really going to help too. And I think outside of that, just pay attention to when it's time to start going face. A lot of times everyone just gets too caught up with cleaning up the board.
Which is totally me.
Yeah. It's like if you just do that, if your autopilot clear the board or autopilot hit the face, then you're missing the intricacies of pretty much every deck. I mean, even aggro decks trade sometimes, and even control decks go face. So it's just recognizing when it's time to kind of flip that switch. It's a really big deal too.
There are two things chat room's yelling right now I really agree with. One, use Hearthstone deck tracker. Two,
Sure.
always assume RNG hates you.
Yeah, well, if this Crackle rolls 3, do I have a backup plan? Is
Yes.
oftentimes like a thing you need to think.
Implosion, lightning storm if you're actually playing that in a shaman deck right now.
So Jocelyn, you probably had this exact same kind of moment in time as this guy, right? Where you were like, okay, so what am I like? How am I still not better now, or like what do I need to do to change to get better? And what did you do at that moment?
I pretty much picked a deck that was part of my favorite class at the time, which was Mage, and I just learned that deck because one of the great things about ladder is you really don't have to diversify when you're trying to just get from kind of like the lowish middle ranks. So kind of like if you're at rank 15 and your goal is 10 or 5, you can do that, and some would argue you can get all the way to legend just with one deck that you know inside and out. Because knowing exactly what my deck is capable of, like when I'm out of win conditions and it's time to concede and not waste my time anymore, or knowing like what my tools are to deal with what their stuff might be and when I should use them and when I shouldn't, like knowing myself inside and out is probably the best way to get, just past that kind of rank 10-ish wall.
Sure.
Yeah. So I mean,
agree
like
with that.
obviously, like knowing your opponent 100%, like if you have a good idea of like turn 4 against a paladin, I'm probably going to see True Silver. Just like that kind of information is really, really good to have. And I think pretty easy once you start playing the game more and more. It's kind of the first thing you start to notice. But knowing yourself and knowing your deck is really, really, really important. And something that can kind of help with that is if you are looking to get really seriously into Hearthstone and you do want to start pushing for legend and you want to kind of invest a little bit more time and possibly a little bit of money, is if you're looking for a coach, someone who can say like, yeah, I'll take an hour and I will teach you the ins and outs of X deck. And I know like there's a whole bunch of different resources for that. There's Twitch streamers that offer coaching. I think Dills, are you still offering coaching?
Yeah, but not. It's a little different. You have to contact me when we set it up. But I think there's like a Hearth coaching site. Let me see if I can find it. Hearthcoach.net? No, that's not it. Hearthstonecoaching.com. I think I'm pretty sure if you just Google it, like there's a site out there that actually like has a bunch of people who coach and like at a different price points, so you can like find one that works for you.
Cool.
So yeah. Even if it's just a buddy who knows a little bit more about it than you, to just like play a deck together and have him get on Skype and watch you play and talk about each turn together.
I think everyone that wants to get better at Hearthstone should go right now to Twitter and just bother Ixar until he coaches you.
That's very likely that
like,
will happen, yes.
If you are looking for kind of like a free coaching without like the actual interaction kind of an experience, is just go to Twitch. Like watch somebody who, find somebody who's streaming whatever deck it is that you want to learn and just watch them, because they're going to get all those random matches. They're going to, say, oh, I'm playing X thing right now because of Y reason. So you'll kind of get the one-sided information of how to play your deck just from that Twitch experience. For the most part, some streamers sit there and don't say anything, but some are actually really good and really educational. And as I think we've mentioned before, if you're looking for a little bit more interaction, look for the smaller Twitch streams. Like, don't go into like Kibler or Savitsa's stream and try to get your questions answered. It's a whole lot easier if you've got somebody with maybe like 25 to 50 viewers, because usually they can talk through stuff and answer questions from chat a whole lot easier because their chat's not flying by. So look for those smallish streams.
Some larger streams are actually pretty good. If you go to like Hotform stream and just at Hotform in the chat and ask him a very specific question, he will oftentimes answer it. So it's worth even a try in some of those bigger ones. But yeah, don't be surprised they don't answer. And I like your idea of going to Twitch and find someone who's playing your deck, but I think also it's important to note, like, be active when you're watching them, like not just like veg out and watch. Every time they're making a turn, picture what you would do and then see what they do and then think about why they did something different.
Yeah, learning Hearthstone is not a passive experience, that's for sure.
Yes. Yeah, actually, I don't know if we haven't talked about it on the show, but there was a guy who did a YouTube series on my play versus the pros, and essentially what he did is he took a bunch of Twitch VODs and watched them all, and every turn like came up with his play and then marked how many times his play was different than the pros play, and came up with like a surprisingly large amount of different plays than he would. And he was like, even things like placement and how they traded. If it was at all different, I marked it down as like different, right?
Huh.
And he found out that like, oh my God, the pros are definitely making much different plays than I am. It's not just RNG and draws that make a difference.
I agree. Joss, you want to take the final email?
Sure. The last email comes to us from Brian. Says, "Hello, guys and gals. Sorry, I'm not creative enough for a big intro. Just wanted to bring up a couple of points from a small, but I believe not insignificant portion of the Hearthstone population. Those of us with no time to complete dailies or much of anything else besides a few games that day. For the past year, I've been loving Hearthstone, but have had to make hard decisions. Do I work on my dailies or try hard on ladder? Most days, I don't have enough time to get more than 3 to 5 games in, and while I can get good at a deck, I can't get good at all the meta decks out there to complete dailies. It's a rare time that I find to sit down and play for any significant amount of time between working 60 hours a week, spending time with family, taking care of my daughter, who, side note, still loves Stitches, if Garrett can remember that early into the Nexus, etc. I think Wild might solve this. As we have seen with with older versions of Magic the Gathering, the combo decks get insane. One of you mentioned turn 3 kill. That's a very short game. That means more games can be played in a shorter amount of time. Dailies get done in 5 minutes versus 15 minutes. This adds up over time to make my experience much more enjoyable. I'm okay with losing on turn 3 if my deck can also win by turn 3. It's like the Heroes of the Storm effect versus Dota 2. Anyone who's played against a control warrior with a Reno lock for 2 fatigue can understand this, especially when they're getting spouse aggro. # feels bad, man. Those of us who've been around since the beta, pay for packs, have almost all the cards because we're enjoying having the cards and have no time to grind, may just keep the wild format going due to time constraints. People are complaining about the grind on ladder and have been for years now. We may see this solved naturally through the wild format. Yeah, it doesn't give Hearthstone Championship points, but honestly, most of us aren't trying for a tournament spot, and we just want to be better than we were yesterday. Anyways, hope that brought up some interesting points. And when are we having a morning show Patreon call-in so I can participate? Kidding? Not kidding. Love the show. So I thought that was actually a really good point. Yeah, you're not getting championship points, but man, those games are going to be fast and they're going to be fun. I think there's going to be a lot of people in there doing crazy, fun daily things.
It depends on your definition of fun, but yeah. Yeah. One of the things here I want to clarify for Brian is he's dealing with extreme scenarios here where something that's over by turn 3 or going to fatigue. Like that's
most games are somewhere in between those.
Yeah, most games are somewhere in between those. So I still want to advocate for playing a deck you're more likely to win with, not one you just think is fast. Because you will get your dailies done faster if you're not losing games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, if the more you win, the better. And even in standard, there's going to be decks that essentially have the game won by turn. Yeah, you haven't done 30 damage yet, but you have 3 sticky minions on the board, and you're going face every turn and clearing their board pretty easily. That exists currently. Like really fast zoo decks can get out to incredibly quick starts where the game is kind of over and snowballed already. But what I was talking about is like there will be broken combos where you'll be able to innervate some charge minion, hit them, and then buff it next turn. Like it's going to be stuff like that. That will eventually exist in Wild. I don't know if it's going to be as prevalent as maybe you're thinking it's going to be. I think it's going to be still kind of a rarity because a lot of other decks will be able to deal with those crazy openers. At least once they happen a few times. For people who know about Magic, there was a recent Grand Prix and they played Modern, and there's an Eldrazi deck that plays like essentially a mana card that makes your Eldrazi cards cost 2 less mana, and there's like a bunch of them that cost like 2 mana, so they're basically free. And they're able to, on turn 1, play 2 cards that become the next Eldrazi card you play. So like on turn 1, they play 2 of them, and then on turn 2, they all turn into 5/5s with charge, and then like you hit the face for 15, and like that is the thing that exists in Modern and Magic. So like that kind of stuff will end up happening. It's just going to be a while. I don't think we're going to see that kind of stuff for at least another couple years.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the enthusiasm over hopefully this being a fix to a very specific issue.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Thanks again to our patrons supporting us over at patreon.com/TAC. And keep those iTunes reviews coming. Really do appreciate them. So on this episode, thank you to the following people for your 5-star reviews. Thank you to Rando227, Capachow, Max Rebo31. Keep Jabba dancing, man. You got to keep him happy. NDC1980 and Vross_Nightwing, who says, my only complaint is that the episodes aren't longer. Fair enough, man. I'm glad that's your only complaint.
We're doing the best we can.
Yeah, I know. I was like, how much
We're
longer
trying.
would you like them to be?
Find us on amove.tv. We're also over at youtube.com/amovetv. Thanks to our Patreon producers, Declan H and LVE. Get our coffee mugs and pint glasses over at bit.ly/amoved store and our t-shirts on /loot.com. Follow us on Twitter at TAC Podcast and catch us live every Monday. Or no, we're Tuesdays now. I need to change the damn script. Catch us on Tuesday nights at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/amovetv. You can also catch us on alphageekmedia.com. And big thanks to BrianGriffithMusic.com for our music. Dills, where can folks find you?
First, you can find me correcting. It was not a GP, it was a Pro Tour. You're right. Thank you, Slayer King 666. It was a Pro Tour Magic Oath of the Gatewatch. There you go. Correction made. You can also find me on Twitter at Willie Dills. Check out the stream, twitch.tv/WillieDillsSF. I got a little bit of work to do, and we'll be streaming today until about 9, and then I'm going to go see Deadpool again. So that's a thing. The Instance and Stormcast, the other shows that I do, and I don't think there's any like special events coming up. But if you haven't seen the Heroes Charity Brawl that me and Garrett did, I think the VODs are going up in various places. I think Scott's putting them up on his YouTube feed.
Yeah.
So you should definitely go watch it. It was
For
a
the
blast.
love of God, go watch the Sexy Picard game if you want to see just how bad randomness can treat an entire team of people.
And just
Or-
how
yeah.
salty
Or how
Garrett
good.
gets.
Just serious
Serious
Garrett rage.
Garrett
If
salt,
you're,
yeah.
you're missing the Garrett rage,
Oh,
you
yeah.
get some nice juicy
Yeah.
Garrett rage in that. But
Well,
we also raised $2,600 for I think even a little bit more afterwards.
Yes.
For Make-A-Wish. So that was fantastic. It was a huge success, and I'm pretty sure we're talking about doing more of that. So keep your eyes and
And-
ears peeled for that.
Donations are still open, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, you can still go heroescharitybrawl.com.
Yep. That's the
Um,
website.
Yeah, so if you are interested in continuing to help out the cause, and some little boy will get to see and meet John Cena, and go ahead and
Or
go over
something else.
there. Or something else.
not-
but likely it's
Why
gonna
would you
be-
want
Garrett-
anything
it's
else?
not
I think is what Dill's
guaranteed.
saying.
That's,
I was a
that's
little
what
kid.
will
I want to
happen.
meet John Cena.
Yeah. It was $2,661 raised. All of that going to the Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Yes, absolutely.
Raised by
It was a great
99
event.
people. Come on, we need a 100th. We need a 100th person. Get in there and
That's actually- yeah, that would be cool.
bump us up to 2,700 even. Come on, you know you want to. You know you want to.
So yeah, check all that stuff out, and then Garrett, you did a stream with a bunch of us on your channel, and somebody made a kick-ass re-edit of it.
Yeah, with just all the funny bits.
Yeah, so
you know,
go check that out. I don't know
all
how
the-
to find it, but I don't know.
check my Twitter.
Look it up. It's
Just
amazing.
check my Twitter feed at Garrett Art. Yeah. And we played more Overwatch yesterday with Scott came and Patrick came and Kyle's wife came. Yeah. I invited you guys, but it was super last minute, so it was,
I know. I woke up and I was working, and then I saw the thing, and I was like, I didn't open Skype until later. So
anyways, Joss, where can folks find you?
Right here on Amove TV every Wednesday night for the Gamers In. You can also follow me on Twitter and Twitch at Joss Plays. And tonight, Tuesday, and every Tuesday, we have Ladies Night. So we stream some heroes, we drink some wine, we yell obscenities at the other team. It's pretty fantastic. So you guys should all come and check that out. Usually go live somewhere between 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern. And again, that's twitch.tv/JossPlays.
Sweet. You can find me on Twitter at Garrett Art. I don't know what show I'm doing. Let's talk about Star Wars in literally. I'm doing it in minutes. We're about to record a new one, so go subscribe to Let's Talk About Star Wars. It's me. It's Tom Merritt. It's Jenny Josephson. As advertised, talking about Star Wars. So go check that out. And the Angry Nerd is back. It's coming back weekly. So check that out as well. Thanks again to our sponsor, Squarespace, for sponsoring the show. Use the code TAC at checkout. Get 10% off your first order. That's going to do it for episode 136 of The Angry Chicken. Until we meet again, job's done.
job's done.
Job's done.
Yes.
No.
Maybe.